So it's very nice to be with you. As Matt said, I am training to become a vicar. I'm usually with the kids, so it's really nice to be with you. You're so much better behaved than them. But we're British, aren't we? So let's just talk a little bit about Storm Eunice. Anyone else, I know James did, but anyone else watched Big Jet TV on Friday? Yes, come on. If you haven't, go check it out. It's this guy called Jerry Dyer, and apparently he does it all the time. It's not so interesting when it's not a storm, I'm going to tell you right now. But basically, he films jets coming into land at Heathrow. And so with the stormy weather, it was super entertaining. They were kind of wobbling all over the place. Would they land? Would they not? I got really into it. But before Friday, I didn't really take Storm Eunice very seriously. You know what it's like? The news are always telling us stuff, aren't they? And I just thought, but it's just a bit of wind. It's not going to be that bad. Anyway, Friday morning, I woke up to a flurry of text messages from my friends who don't live in London, who were like, Kirst, London's on red alert for the first time. Are you okay? In your top floor flat and inner city life, are you okay? And one particular friend sent me a bit of advice. And let me share some of this advice with you. Should we ever find ourselves with another storm, it won't be Eunice, will it? It'll be like Freddie, because they go through the alphabet. But let me share this advice with you. Do not walk a high-sided dog over a bridge. The article went on to say, let the hound poop in the garden today. Do not fool yourself that just because you've put a high-vis jacket on your old English sheepdog to look a little bit like Boris Johnson, that it's okay to walk it over the nearest suspension bridge. You could end up flying it like a kite. Now, that's great advice, but I don't own a dog, I don't have a garden, and London doesn't have suspension bridges, so not the best bit of advice. Let me tell you the second bit of advice that came from my friend. It tells you a lot about what my friends think about me, I think. But anyway, do not attempt to fix power cuts yourself. If the power lines have been brought down, resist the temptation to connect the lines together so that you can carry on binge-watching Reacher. It isn't actually as simple as connecting the two sparkling ends together. 13,800 volts will not care that you are wearing rubber wellies. I don't even own a pair of wellies. Anyway, we survived Storm Eunice, hopefully. Hopefully not too much damage. And I'm going to be speaking this morning on one of the Gospels, a Gospel called John. The Gospels are simply eyewitness accounts of the story of Jesus. And just to give you a little bit of context, it's like the Bible overview in about 20 seconds, so bear with. Many, many years before the time of Jesus, God said to the people of Israel, I'm going to give you a forever king, I'm going to give you a Messiah, I'm going to keep all my promises to you. Fast forward the Christmas story, we know it, right? Jesus is born to Mary in a stable with lots of animals and donkeys and lots of poop, and some visitors turn up and they give them some gifts. And then there's this guy called John the Baptist who baptizes people. The name gives it away, John the Baptist. He baptizes various people, but he spends his time telling people that this person's going to come after him. Anyway, Jesus is born, he meets John the Baptist, he gets baptized, he meets Andrew and Peter, and they become his followers. And the point in which we are jumping into the story today is we're going to meet Philip and Nathanael. So let me read today's reading for us. It's from John 1, 43 to 50. It's going to come on the screen behind me. So, the next day, Jesus decides to leave Galilee. Finding Philip, he says to him, follow me. Philip, like Andrew and Peter, also known as Simon Peter, just to confuse us, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip, like Nathanael, told him, we have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and the one whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Nazareth? Can anything good come from there? Nathanael asked. Come see, says Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, here is a true Israelite, in whom there is no deceit. How do you know me? Nathanael asked. And Jesus answered, I saw you whilst you were sitting under the fig tree before Philip called you. Then Nathanael declared, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. That king I was talking about earlier, promised to the people of Israel by God many years before. And Jesus says to Nathanael, you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree. You will see greater things than that. Okay, so the person of Nathanael. We don't actually know loads about him. He doesn't really appear much more in the Gospels after this moment, but he's really important in this part of the story. So unlike Andrew and Philip and Simon Peter, who are all from Bethsaida, which is a fishing town on sort of the northeastern side of the Sea of Galilee, and it literally means house of fishing, so you can kind of tell what the town's about. Nathanael's a West Sider. And the only way that I can really explain this to you is like the north-south divide in London. Those of us in the north, we know the north is best. Why would you live south? Thank you. Why would you live south? The true tube lines are bad. Anyway, it's a little bit like that. Nathanael, he's a northwestern guy, and he knows that's the best place to live. And he lives in a town called Cana. And just up from Cana, there's this little tiny town called Nazareth. And it doesn't have a bad reputation. It just doesn't matter. It's so small, it doesn't matter. It's not like, if you Google it today, it's not like the Arab Christian city that it is. It was much, much tinier in the day of Nathanael. So when Nathanael hears his buddy Philip say to him, Nathanael, we found that very person that our ancestors have spoken about. We found that promised king. We found him. And he's from this town called Nazareth. Nathanael is understandably suspicious. Now, it's worth me saying this at this point, because if, like me, you grew up in church or in a church school, we were given images of Jesus, weren't we? A white saviour type of Jesus. That is not who Nathanael, Philip, Simon Peter and Andrew encounter. Jesus would have been Middle Eastern, brown-skinned man. He would have spoke Aramaic at home, and he would have read the biblical Hebrew in the synagogue. He never was and never will be the white man that we so often see. And I think it's important for us to know that at this point. The other important point of information: Jesus is going to come and usher in a new kingdom. And Nathanael would have known about this. It would have been passed down through the generations, told from his ancestors. There would be this new promised king one day, and those promises that have been made to us, they're going to be kept. And this new era of a new kingdom is coming. And I think it can be hard for us in the 21st century to consider what a kingdom's like, or even what a monarch would have been like in the day. For us, at best, and I realise it's risky talking about our royal family at the moment, they're like an ornamental fixture within our society at best, I think. However, in the time that Nathanael lived, kingdoms would have had a lot more power. And so I think what Jesus was about, and I would argue is about, is a comprehensive restructuring of social life. And so when a new monarch came into power at that time, the societal life would have changed depending on who was in power, what they're about, where were they from. And so Nathanael hears that this person's in town. And he isn't just about to say, I'm going to follow you because my friends tell me to do so. He wants to make sure of it for himself. Anyone here a fan of Peaky Blinders? Who's watching it? A few hands at the back. Very exciting. Good news if you've never watched it before, because season 6 is coming out next Sunday, and you have got exactly 6 days to watch 5 seasons. I've done the maths for you. There's 30 episodes out. Each episode is about an hour long. That means there's 30 hours of TV to get through. I personally would probably watch a season per day and have a day's rest, ready for Sunday. But you may not have all that time. I recognise many of you got kids. You're not going to have a full day to watch TV. I understand that. So you could do 3 10-hour binge episodes. That feels pretty doable. Or 6 5-hour episodes. Once those kids are in bed, straight on to Peaky Blinders. Highly recommend it to you. It got recommended to me in lockdown number 3, I think it was. And I was like, no. So many people are like, have you watched Peaky Blinders? Have you watched Peaky Blinders? No, I have not. And I'm not interested. So let me do exactly what I hate people doing to me and recommend it to you. Starts season 6 next week. And I reckon we could have a social here at the end of the season for the finale. We could all come dressed in our favourite outfits. I quite like chucking socials out to the church, because then we get them. Anyway, enough of Thomas Shelby. Go watch it. But let's go back to Nathanael of Cana. So Nathanael, he's not about to do something because everyone says do it. He's his own person. He's going to make his own mind up. He's going to do his own thing. He's going to decide what he decides to believe. I wonder if you're here as a guest, as someone who's been baptised, if you've asked them, why are they getting their child baptised? Because you clearly matter to them. You clearly matter to them because they've bothered to invite you to come today. And it's true, isn't it? When, people have babies, they get baptised, or weddings or funerals, we gather those closest to us around us. We want them to be there to mark these occasions with us because it matters. So your friends don't want you to miss out on this occasion, but I would argue that it's more than that. In choosing to be baptised, or in this case, choosing to have your child baptised, it's not based on the good coffee we serve here, or the free croissants we give away, or the nice, pleasant company surrounding you right now. And although it pains me to admit it, it's not based on the outstanding kids' work we have here. But rather, I think they do it because they're convicted of the person of Jesus. It's the very same person that Philip was convinced of too, so much so that he says to Nathanael, hey, come see. Philip knew that the evidence becomes convincing only when it is appropriated personally. Come see for yourself, Nathanael. It's a personal invitation to his friend. So Nathanael does follow Philip. They've got to have had a friendship, right? There's got to be some trust there, much like you've come today because your friends have invited you. But Jesus doesn't wait for Nathanael to reach him. Jesus looks up and says to Nathanael, here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. Jesus' move is really clever there. What he's actually referencing in that moment is 2 brothers called Jacob and Esau from the Old Testament. Now, if you've got kids here, particularly if you've got siblings, or you've spent enough time around kids, you may well have used the phrase that I regularly say to our 3 to 5-year-olds in particular: sharing is caring. And you'll know exactly what I'm referencing. About 3 weeks ago downstairs with our darling 3 to 5-year-olds, they were really obsessed with dollies. You know what it's like with kids? And they become absolutely obsessed with a particular toy, and they want that one toy, and nothing else is going to satisfy them. This one kid had this dolly, and they were rocking the baby, and it was all very sweet and all really angelic. And then this other kid has got this look in their eye, and they've gone over to this little kid, and they've kind of gone, sharing's caring. And I overheard it, so I thought I should probably go and just supervise what's going on. And this kid who got the baby just went, nope. But the kid who's got the baby's had this doll for quite a while. I've recognised this. And so I sort of went over and said, remember, we share our toys, don't we, in this group? They don't belong to anyone in particular. They're all of ours. So sharing is caring, and we do need to share. And really begrudgingly, sort of through gritted teeth, this kid with the baby just went, sharing is caring, and handed the baby off. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant, success. Kid went off and played with something else. Anyway, I turned my back. A minute has passed, and there's this screech. And I know what's happened. And as I turn back around, kid who had the baby originally has got the baby back. And this other kid is now screaming because they've lost the baby. And I know what's happened. It's been snatched out of their hands when my back has been turned. So we had to go and talk to them, and we had to repair this little relationship. And it was all fine in the end. We found more babies, and everything was great. And the reason I tell you that, Jacob and Esau are brothers. And as brothers do, and sisters do, and children do, they like to fight. And ultimately, Jacob steals something from Esau. Something that wasn't his to have in the first bit. You see, Jacob was deceitful. And so when Jesus says to Nathanael, I see no deceit in you, that is what he's referencing. And Nathanael would have known that. Jacob is the traditional ancestor of the people of Israel. And so Jesus is actually saying to Nathanael, in you, I see a good and honest person. And Nathanael's response is you're right. I am a good and honest person. I got no deceit in me. But how do you, a stranger, know me? So Jesus goes on, and he refers to seeing him sitting under a fig tree. And the point is that Jesus already knew Nathanael. He knew him before Philip had even reached him and said, hey, come see this person that I've met. Jesus knows Nathanael in the same way that Jesus knows Leo, he knows Joss, he knows Matthias. And Nathanael suddenly recognizes him for who he truly is, the Son of God. Nathanael recognizes that in that moment that God is present with him. But you may well be sat there thinking, what on earth does that have to do with baptism? And it would be a valid question. So let me tell you this. I think Nathanael's story reveals the real heart of humanity, actually. That we just want to be in control of our own lives. We're going to make our own mind up. We're going to decide what we believe and what we don't believe, what we like and what we don't like, and no one else is really going to convince us of it. Bishop Rowan Williams says this about baptism. Baptism is joining a community of chaos. That in our human nature, we tend to try and cope on our own. That we can cause quite a lot of chaos to ourselves and to other people. At best, we might operate in our nuclear units. But actually, we have this human tendency to screw stuff up, to go through life and make mistakes. And yet, so it is in baptism that we are admitting that actually what we need is some help. Leo, Joss's, Matthias' parents have rightly acknowledged that they need help raising their children. And godparents and members of this church, in case you haven't realised, you've just agreed to do that. You have just said, people who said the words on the screen, I'll help you raise your kid. Little side story here, I'm also a godparent. I've got more than 2 godchildren, but 2 in particular, 2 sisters. They are lovely. And so godparents, can I recommend occasionally you go and babysit? You show up and you do the whole babysitting thing and you give the parents a nice off. You do loads of brownie points to the parents. And you spend some time with the darling children. And the 2 that I'm particularly godparent to have got really into watching movies with me. Popcorn, sweets. I'm like the fun godparent. I rock up and I'm like, I'm here. Fun and chaos can pursue. And anyway, a couple of weeks ago I had the girls and we were sat watching this great movie. And the 5-year-old is on my lap and she's having a bit of a cuddle. And all of a sudden there's this rumble. And I just sort of looked at her and she went, I love you. And I thought, I'm just going to ignore what I think's just taken place. Anyway, a few minutes later, a rumble happens again. And I looked at her and she said, I love you so much. And I said, I love you too, but not when you fart on my lap. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, godparents, it's a delight to be a godparent. It's a real honour. And I'm sure you will have many a delightful moment with your godchildren, helping to raise them, because it does take a family and a village to raise a kid, doesn't it? We all got to play our part. And it is through baptism that we admit to ourselves and to others our very human nature means that we need a community. And here at St. Mary's, I do think we are a community of chaos. You've seen the kids. They run around, they cause havoc, they touch the instruments, they dance on the stage, and they own the place as they should. They shouldn't have to sit silently. I'm fully all up for kids running around and causing chaos. It's exactly what I think the kingdom of God looks like. And we believe that you turn up not in your Sunday finest and your best clothes, but simply as you are. And I think as a society, we've become accustomed to how church is so often thought of as being out of touch with culture. Church is often thought of, and rightfully so in so many cases, as a place of judgment, a place of rule keeping, of small-mindedness, and my list could go on. But what I want to say to you is these reflections upon church don't actually reflect the Christian faith. In fact, they stink of religion. And the Christian claim is, as Nathanael's experience speaks of, that we are only truly known when we meet our Creator. It's not about a set of rules. It's not about a religion, but it's about the very person of Jesus. Let me share a couple of stories with you. One's of a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, and she, life was going really well for her. She was a teacher. She had her own flat. She had a dog. She holidayed a lot. Life was pretty good for her, pretty sweet. She would describe it as that. But she would always do the latest trends, be it yoga, meditation, retreat, social media detoxes, crystals. She was doing all of it. And she was just kind of seeking, but she couldn't really tell you what for. And anyway, one day someone said to her, why don't you come and do a course? Why don't you ask all those questions that are going on that we talk about? Why don't you just come and ask them? And she did. And she did this course, she found Jesus, and she would say that life looks different now. Not necessarily on the outside, but on the inside, it does look different. She feels more peaceful. Before I was here, I worked in fashion, and career-wise, life was excellent. It was really good. But personal life was pretty bad. And I wouldn't have ever admitted that to anybody. I was quite private at the time, and definitely would have sorted all my issues out myself. In fact, I'll be honest, I can still be like that. But I used to really be like that a lot more. Anyway, a friend of mine one Sunday said to me, do you want to come to church? And so I did. And I rocked up at church, and I was really curious as to this community that I suddenly encountered. I don't know about you, but my impression of church was it was quite dull. It was sort of quite sober. People would sit very straight. And the church I walked into was not like that at all. There was always loud music playing, and everyone looked really happy, and I just couldn't really get my head around it because it wasn't what my experience of church was like. And in that place, I decided actually I had a lot of questions about faith. I had questions about life. I wanted some answers. And so much like my friend, I did a course and I asked all the questions I had, discovered that it's okay to ask questions in church, and went on to find the person of Jesus. You see, the true Christian claim is that God isn't this far off God, waiting and watching our every move, waiting to smite us down. Or that God is sat on this throne as judgment, as I was once told when I was in church as a child. This person described God as being sat on this throne of judgment, and that one day, you see the movies, you get on the escalator, don't you, and you make your way up to heaven on the escalator, and you reach the pearly gates, and God is there, and he's going to judge your every move and every deed and every action and every thought you've ever had. Well, what if the God who created the universe chose to reveal themselves by slipping into skin and walking amongst us? And what if the love and grace and mercy of Jesus was so offensive to us as humans that we put him on the cross? And what if God, in response, said yes to all of our no's and resurrected him 3 days later? Because that's the truth of the Christian claim. That God comes as close as hands and feet, as near as breathing, and offers us a chance to know him. So I want to suggest to you this morning that God is real, that he likes you, that he likes me, and that we will only find true rest, feel fully known when we get to know him. And experience has told us here as a church that often churches haven't actually offered a place where you can ask your questions openly and honestly. And so we run a course called the Life Course. The Life Course is about meaning. It offers you a place to ask all of your questions you may have. It runs for 6 weeks. It starts with a meal together. And then we hear a talk, discuss it. We hear a short talk and a presentation on various topics like science and atheism and religion and crystals and tarot cards and you name it, we're talking about it. And at the end, you use a small group discussion with people of like-minded opinions. It's a bit like grabbing a glass of wine in the pub and having those deep and meaningful chats. That's the best way I can describe it to you. It's a place of no judgment where everyone is welcome and anyone can come. Everyone can have their say or not at all if you would prefer. You're welcome irrespective of having a belief or not, and I would love to invite you to join us. You can come once and never again. We will not come judging you down. The next course begins this Wednesday. If you're interested, the QR code's behind me. So you can point your phone at it, you can scan it. There's a flyer on your seat with more information. Or John is at the back of church, you can speak to him. Equally, do come speak to me after the service. But I'd love to invite you to do the course if you've got questions and you think this might be interest to you. Or if you've been calling this place home for a little bit and you would like to get to know some other people, then do come join us on the course. But for now, we're going to sing our final song, so why don't we stand?